We can start the meeting now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being streamed live on our website and being recorded. Remote meetings are still something new to us, and their unfamiliarity and the need to get used to their technical operation mean that they're unlikely to run as smoothly as meetings held in person. So I hope that everyone taking part or observing will bear with us. To help with this, councillors have been given guidance on the conduct of remote meetings, and I'd like to just emphasise a few of its points. Hopefully members of the committee are taking part from a place where they will not be disturbed or distracted. When not actively participating in the meeting, I would ask members and officers to keep their audio and video turned off. Anyone wishing to speak should type a H in the chat box and I will call them when it's their turn to speak. All questions and contributions must come through the chair, and please remember to turn your video on and your audio on when I ask you to speak. Any councillor with an interest in any item should declare it and keep their audio and video off when it is being considered. They will not be included in any vote on the subject. When it comes to a decision on any of the recommendations or motions before us, I will assume that if nobody says that they oppose them, everyone will be in agreement. If anyone says that they are opposed, I will ask for a formal vote to be conducted. If we lose live stream on the website, I will adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes and hopefully the problem can be fixed. If it cannot, I will adjourn the meeting until a future date. So, moving on to item 1 on the agenda, and apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. I've had apologies from Councillor Watson, and I'll just run through who we have attending, so you're here as Chair. We then have Councillors Dan Clark, Paul Clark, Dudley, Large, Raven, Sampson and Councillor Sisney. Councillor Chris Davidson is here as the Cabinet Member, and the officers present are Mandy Fay, Elizabeth Brooks, Alison Chesil, Paul Brooks, and then we have Barry Pryke and Lisa Clampin from BDO, the external auditors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. I'm moving on to item 2 on the agenda, which are the minutes from the previous meeting on the 29th of July. Is everybody happy with the minutes from our previous meeting?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. And item 3 on the agenda is a declaration of interests. I guess as there are no declarations of interest, we can move on to item number 4, which is the public questions. I understand that we haven't received any questions from the public.
Yep, that's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And item number 5 on the agenda is announcements. And there's one announcement this evening, and that is regarding the email that members of the committee will have received on the PSAA's local audit forum. So it was an invitation to a webinar on the 1st of August, and you're asked to please sign up via the link on the email if you wish to participate. So item 6 on the agenda is the external audit update, and I understand that this will be a verbal update and will be presented by Barry Pryke. Right.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
So the purpose of this verbal update really is just to bring the committee up to speed on where the external audit process is at. So at the July committee, members will recall that I confirmed that we'd agreed with the council that our audit would commence at the start of September, with fieldwork taking place throughout September and into early October. So our audit is on track. So we did start on the 1st of September as agreed. We are currently obviously in the middle of our field work. We would expect the detailed field work to be completed by the 9th of October. There will still be some processes we have to go through in terms of our own internal quality control and review processes, and there are also some aspects of our work that we aren't able to conclude until we get much nearer to the sign-off of the account. So things such as subsequent events, which is anything that may have happened since the balance sheet date, the 31st of March 20, and the date that we sign off and the committee approve the accounts, which will be towards the end of November. There are certain procedures that we have to go through, and we won't be able to do those until much nearer that sign-off point in time. In terms of the progress on the actual audit work, our priority was to start picking samples. So for audit procedures where we need to test a sample of transactions from different areas of the accounts, we work to get those samples selected and issued early on in the process. We have started to receive that information back from the council, and the team continue to work through that. In terms of the main risk areas, which were the areas that we reported to the committee in our audit plan that we brought to members in March, work on all of those areas is well progressed. So just to remind members, those areas covered the management override of controls, revenue recognition, particularly grants, specific revenue grants, and expenditure cut-off, valuation of land, buildings and investment properties, the valuation of the net pension liability, and also related party transactions. So as I say, our procedures in each of those areas are well progressed. We will report the outcome of our audit procedures to the committee at the end of November. Our audit completion report will obviously pick up on the findings against those key risk areas, but also any other matters that we've identified that we feel need to be brought to the attention of the committee prior to them approving the accounts. Alongside our work on the statement of accounts, our value for money work is also progressing. So that involves primarily review of documentation, and that is largely complete. There are some queries with the council to respond to, and we will obviously work through those and discuss those with officers as we progress through the rest of the audit fieldwork period over the next couple of weeks. That was all I wanted to say, really, but I'm obviously happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Are there any questions on item 6? I don't think there are any questions. So if we move on to item number 7, which is the internal audit update, and that will be presented by Elizabeth Brooks.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My first paper this evening is just a short update summarising the work that we've undertaken since we last reported to you in June. We would normally do updates twice a year through our interim report in December and our annual report in June. But given the unprecedented nature of this year, it seems sensible to provide an additional update to this committee, just to advise on the work that we've been doing over the last few months. So section 2 of the report covers the completion of the 1920 annual plan. You may remember when I reported in the annual report in June, we had 4 outstanding reports that we unfortunately couldn't complete by the year end as we had hoped. 3 of those reviews have now been completed and had a good result with moderate and substantial assurance. And the remaining review relating to community infrastructure levy, unfortunately, due to the impact of COVID and resourcing restrictions and staff availability, we realised that we might have ended up with a report that perhaps didn't actually add a huge amount of value. So we decided that it would be better to draw a line and agreed with management that we will undertake a full review of SIL next year instead. In section 3, we cover the advisory and assurance work that we've undertaken during the council's COVID response. So this has obviously been in reaction to the various things that have emerged over the last few months. That's included initial on-site advice during the setup of the community hub to ensure that the controls were incorporated into those new processes and then reviewed once they were operational. We've also provided control design advice for the various business grants that the council have had to process, and also now looking at advice regarding the post-payment assurance side of those, which is forthcoming, and also the council has had to process a huge number of refunds and invoice cancellations over the last few months. So we've undertaken some sample checking, particularly in relation to leisure, Highlands, car parking, to check that those refunds have those processes have been undertaken correctly, and certainly our sample testing hasn't identified any issues. And in addition to that, we've also been providing ongoing control design advice and audit support for the implementation of the council's new finance system as well. And then in section 4, we outline our current work in progress, although these are near completion. That includes the review of the pilot of the new digital portfolio office, emerging issues from COVID-19. So that isn't a traditional audit. We wouldn't be able to give an assurance statement on that. But what we have been looking at is compiling the views of across the council, sort of various service managers and directors over sort of what has worked well over the last few months, what have been the opportunities, but also what are the emerging risks. The longer this goes on, what are the emerging risks to the council, and trying to compile that and look at that from a risk management point of view. And that's due for completion very shortly. And we've also been finishing our work on housing allocations, which was deferred from last year. The findings from these 3 reviews will be reported in full in the interim report in December, and once they've all been agreed and finalised. And then our work for the next 6 months is going to be outlined in my next paper. But happy to take any questions on this so far.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Are there any questions on item 7? No. So the committee is asked to note the content of this report. I guess we can agree that it's noted and move on to item number 8, which is the internal audit revised audit plan. And it's also presented by Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as you are aware, we bring the proposed annual audit plan to committee each year for your approval. This would normally happen at the March committee for the plan starting in April, but obviously this wasn't possible this year. While we've been undertaking the work that I've outlined in my previous report, we've also been taking the time to review and analyse the plan for the remainder of this year. So each year we prepare the plan to ensure that we're basing it on the council's highest risks, so that we focus our resource on the most important areas to the council. We use several resources for this, namely the Principal Risk Register, the corporate plan, but we also take into account wider and external issues and risks, and we have several sources for that as well. We then undertake our own independent assessment of all of that information, and that essentially gives us a list for what we consider the key audits to be for that year. We then take that list to service managers to ensure that they agree whether it's reasonable or not, and to discuss any indicative scope, so the areas that we might want to focus on in our actual audit. And then it also gives us the opportunity to understand if there's any other areas of concern that we might not have included, or other areas where audit support might be valuable. We then, once that's agreed, we then take that list to management team who approve before it comes to committee for your approval. So for this year, for 2020-21, the process had already reached management team approval stage. Like I say, it was due to be approved by a committee in March. But even though that didn't happen, we were still able to use that original plan as a starting point for revising the areas that we should still look at in the time that we have till the end of this year. Largely, the highest risks have remained so, and arguably more so when you look at those risks through the lens of the impact of COVID. So once again, we took that revised list back to service managers, and it was also agreed with management team, and that is the list that I'm bringing to you today. I think it's worth noting, though, that although this is a shorter plan, obviously it only covers the last 6 months of this year. With that and the work that we've done already reacting to those emerging risks coming through, we are satisfied that our coverage will still be adequate to provide our annual opinion next year. And if that changed, then obviously I would report that back to committee in December in our interim report. As mentioned in section 3 in my cover report, our budgeted time also includes the capacity to undertake follow-ups from last year's reviews. And the outcome of that is reported, as I say, in our interim and annual reports. And as mentioned in section 4, we also have built in contingency for any further ad hoc work or audit support as needed. And we would do that every year, but obviously this year it's even more important, as we probably don't know what the world is going to throw at us next. So we've got that contingency to support as needed. And we also have a budget to draw upon additional external support should we need it, and that might be in the case, say, that there's some specialist audit knowledge required, so normally like involved with IT or something like that. We have that ability to draw upon that if we need to. So I think that just leaves the plan, and obviously happy to take any comments or queries on the reviews that we've selected for this year. But I would just like to say the items that are in italics from page 19, these were reviews that were on the original plan, but we now don't have the capacity to deliver in the remainder of this year. However, I've left them on there because they are still risks, they are still risks to the council, and I think it's important that they are still considered for the plan next year. But also, should any of the reviews on the current list drop off for any reason, then we can obviously then take them from that list if we needed to. So happy to take any questions or queries on that plan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Are there any questions on item 8? No. So the committee is requested to note the content of the report and approve the revised audit internal plan for 2020-21. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Great, thank you. And moving on to item 9 on the agenda, which is the internal audit strategy for 2020-21, and that again is presented by Elizabeth Brooks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this audit strategy is a requirement of our compliance with our internal audit standards. As you may remember, I brought the internal audit charter to you at the last committee, and that is essentially the charter is the what and the why, and the strategy is the how. And it essentially outlines our mission and goals covering the next 18 months. Taking you straight into the strategy itself, the mission is there at the top, and hopefully that's largely self-explanatory, and ultimately it meets the professional definition of internal audit. We then set out 4 goals to deliver this mission, say, over the next 18 months. The first one includes planning, which you've seen evidence of today. The second one being the role we play in the council's wider governance and assurance framework, which is really important, and it shows sort of how our little cog fits into that bigger wheel. Our third one is our aim to become a trusted advisor to senior managers and the committee. And the fourth is to ensure that we have continuous development of our team, so that we all have the skills to deliver a really effective service. The key internal outputs on the next page and the measurements of success, you should recognise as these are essentially the reports that we bring to committee on a regular basis. And the measurements of success we turn into our KPIs, and we report them alongside our annual report every year. The provision of service I've just covered. We have that mix of in-house, but have the ability to draw on external support as and when we need it. And then the last page is essentially the various reference points that underpin all of that work. So we will report our progress against this strategy, and we'll probably do that alongside the annual report. That seems the most sensible time to do it, especially as we would have our KPIs in there. But ultimately, our aim is we want this strategy to ensure that we continuously develop and we continuously improve to be a really good audit service for the council. So again, happy to take any questions or comments on that.
Okay, are there any questions on item 9? No. So the committee is requested to note the content of this report and approve the internal audit strategy for 2020 to 22. Is that agreed?
Agreed. Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to agenda item number 10, which is the risk management update, and this will be presented by Alison Chisel. Thank you.
Hello, Chair, thank you. Yeah, so item number 10 is the risk management update. As you can see, it's not the normal standard principal risk register report that we provided 6 months ago. This is a update on the implementation of the new system that we are currently working on. So again, section number 1, we are replacing our current system, which is called Pentana, our existing system, to integrate the performance and risk management modules into our new finance system, which is actually not just a finance system, it's an enterprise resource planning system. So what that means is a lot of benefits as outlined in section 2 of this application. It can be used anywhere. It can be used on any device by all staff. It's a single sign-on. It's an integrated platform where you can, I'll put a summary within the report. You can use your budgeting, purchase ordering, procurement card information, and importantly for us, the risk and compliance elements of the business planning and organisational information. So what that will mean is that senior managers particularly and other key service users will have on their dashboard in front of them full information about not just financial but performance and resource information across their organisation or reach, which we're hoping will significantly improve integration into performance and risk management activities. It also integrates within Dynamics as well, and particularly on the basis that we've been working remotely, or not all of us, but quite a few of us have been working remotely recently. The benefits of that system will also be really, really helpful because it's a single source of data. You don't need a separate login. It's really integrated and resilient because it's an Australian, not Australian, but it's an Australian platform, and our own IT service don't have to support it internally. It's a software as a service, so it's in the cloud, just like Microsoft Office. Really, it's a huge system which should give us a really good resilience. Just to take you through the module overview and the appendix on Appendix 1. It's just an overview of the applications we've got within the performance module. Explains that we've got some strategic planning. If you look at page 3, it's got the key elements I'm just going to run through with you. So what we've got in the system is the strategy, our plan, our Chelmsford plan, the climate action emergency action plan, and we've also now put in the wellness, health and wellbeing action plan as well. So those individual actions are allocated to individual members of staff and will be able to be reviewed and monitored across the organisation interactively. So that's be linking to PIs, integrated reporting, and will give us a priority and an instant live feed on where those actions are within the organisation, and link them, because as you can imagine, a lot of those actions from the action plan and our plan are very similar, and we should be able to have integrated one source of truth on certain actions for that, which I think will be really helpful. In terms of risk management, we'll have uploaded the principal risks. We've got risk scoring template and new treatment template in there. And again, the risks around delivery of our plan actions will be monitored. And as we get further into the maturity of the application, we'll be able to put control assessments and link into the audit plan for Elizabeth and her team to be able to look at mitigation and controls around risks. The compliance section is an operational part of the application, so it's going to have those green elements: the fire, health and safety, business continuity, internal audit compliant actions. So they are something that's been identified by an independent professional that needs to be actioned in able to maintain a strong control environment. So things like the fire risk assessments are undertaken by a building control team for our own operational properties, say Hannah's house. So if there's a piece of work that needs to be done, that will be input, uploaded and monitored progress against those. So they're actual really specific compliance. It's a new term for us. They're not identified as risks or internal audit actions. They are a compliance action where it's got a defined start and end date and a really specific action that has to be completed and signed off. So that will give us oversight in terms of critical risk information in certain areas. And you can look at obligations, but that's quite complicated as well. But so that's really, again, integrated. The idea is you'd have a senior manager to be able to not only look at their budget information and their risk and internal audit information, they'll be able to look at their compliance actions that they're responsible for as well. So give a really good level of oversight. And the performance area is probably the least developed at the moment. We're still in a phase of implementing this application, but we have uploaded relevant historic KPI information, and we're working with management team and over in scrutiny committee about how that's going to be shaped going forward, about what PIs will be going into the system. But again, it's all integrated. You can put KPIs against corporate actions. You can put them against individual service managers, locations. There's a real lot of flexibility in there, but as you can imagine, there's also a lot of resource required to implement and monitor that going forward. So that's a sort of quick overview of the system. We're hoping to be able to, the next audit committee, when risk management report will be completed, is December this year, to give you an overview of the system. In terms of timetable, I'm pleased to report we are on target in terms of timetable for the project. We're also on budget and haven't used our contingency, so marginally under budget, and we go live tomorrow. So our part of the application will be ready for them. Throughout October, there'll be training for staff, and we'll be going live for the whole application in November, aligned with the finance lead. So that's a run through of that application. As I say, you'll be able to see it in December, but it's all going to plan, and we're very excited. Thank you, Chair. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you very much, Alison. Are there any questions on this item? And if there are no questions, the committee is asked to note this report. Is it agreed that we've noted the report?
Agreed.
Noted.
Thank you. And moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the modern slavery update. And this again will be presented by Alison. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a new item in terms of governance. reporting for the Audit and Risk Committee. And just as a bit of background, I mean, I'm sure committee members are aware, but within June 2020, the council signed the charter against modern day slavery. Cabinet, full council agreed that. So this piece of work will be coming back to Audit and Risk Committee, and what we're trying to show, well, what we will be showing, is the impact of the work we'll be doing around modern day slavery. So we signed the charter, which is one part of the response. Is the charter? Sorry, the charter has 10 commitments that we have to report on, and that is one element of it, which is mainly around supply chain and procurement practices, which is we have an action plan to deliver that, which is in Appendix 1, the action plan for the charter requirements. As you can see, there's some targets within that appendix, and there's a status update on those where we currently are. I will be preparing a report for December for procurement, our procurement update, and this will include annually update on progress on our implementation of that charter requirements going forward. However, modern day slavery for us within the organisation is far wider. Our responsibilities are far wider than just the charter commitments, and there's quite a lot of work that is already undertaken within the organisation. And we felt it was very important to be able to not just deep dive into the procurement element, but holistically report on all our actions and work within the modern day slavery arena. So Paul Brooks, the Public Health and Protection Manager, is online to talk about Section 3. Hello, Paul.
Good evening. Thank you, Alison. Yeah, we do a lot of work in the council, and we have legal duties and responsibilities around safeguarding, and modern day slavery forms part of that safeguarding work. But it's very difficult to identify and deal with modern day slavery. So we looked at best practice elsewhere, and interestingly, Southend have got a really good, strong partnership that brings all the different agencies together to look at how they can tackle modern day slavery. So we've looked at developing our own partnership. So that would be the Chelmsford Against Slavery Partnership. And the first meeting is due to be held on the 15th, and that's just to try and scope out the interest. And we're really pleased that we've had 30 organisations accept the invite to that partnership. So we think it's foreseeable that we will have the partnership. And it's also a way for members to become involved. So the council's work in conjunction with signing the charter in terms of modern day slavery will become more high profile. That's not to say we don't currently do work. We do work with the police, and we have various actions that we take, and that's against specific intelligence. So we've had some restaurants takeaways and also some brothels in Chelmsford that we've done work with the police to try and address modern day slavery, but it's quite a difficult area. So I think reporting to this committee on the council's work is going to be interesting for it, and I think it's a positive step in tackling this area. I'll hand back now to Alison for the conclusion.
Thank you, Paul. So what we've produced to cover the work that's already undertaken is the action plan, which Paul explained covers the wider work, not just the charter responsibilities. And as you can see, August was completed. I'm pleased to report the work on the website has been updated. September we're here. We're reporting to Audit and Risk Committee, and we're aligning our procedures, including the safeguarding reporting, which is again why Paul's joined this committee for this item. And I say that'll be completed every year. What we found from a sort of governance perspective is that we want, health and safety information probably coming to Audit and Risk Committee as well, but we want to have good governance about all these risk areas for the committee to see in one one report doesn't, we are one organisation, and be able to show that there's a lot of work being undertaken. So that's the wider piece there in terms of reporting. So in October, as Paul mentioned, we've got the Action Against Slavery Partnership. I'll be attending that stakeholder mapping session as well. And so that's a really big piece of work already identified. In November, we've got some more, a bit more operational work complete within our supply and procurement checks. What we're looking for there is increasing our checks on our local supply chain, particularly. We've used November because we'll be looking within the new financial system. We're going to write to all our suppliers. We check all of our suppliers as part of our new system. So that's a really good opportunity to embed and improve our procedures there, which haven't been looked at with respect to slavery. So we're just doing some additional checks in that area. That will be first tier supply chain only. Again, some internal training. When we're training our new users on the financial element of it, we'll be using the opportunity to educate people on the risks around modern day slavery within the supply chain, and probably a little bit wider, including some of the safeguarding work that Paul's talking about. Also in November, I've already scoped it, but we'll be starting a piece of work which will be finished in December, which is a really key piece of work, which is the ethical supplier risk assessment. So a graduate within the procurement team is undertaking a SIPS methodology supplier risk chain assessment for ethical supply, which again, piece of work never been done before. It's a really quite detailed piece of work around our supply chain, the industries we purchase through, and doing literally a risk assessment of which are high risk areas in terms of modern day slavery. That I'm hoping should be able to be certainly the executive summary of that report will be available for me to include within the procurement report for audit committee in December, because I think that's the key milestone to go forward. And also the next piece of work in areas we're looking at is property and housing services. There's some work to be undertaken within whom we lease our properties to, just some additional work there, governance work, and within the housing, just to ensure that the housing supply chain and our procedures have been reviewed for impact within modern day slavery, because as my opening background piece saying, there could be nearly 400 victims of modern day slavery within our constituency. So it is happening, it is real and alive within our area, and that's why we felt it's really important not just to look at the supply chain, the procurement elements, but to look across the whole organisation. So further work, I don't know obviously don't know what the scale of the work, and I'm not just saying property and housing, but when we did an initial risk assessment, we felt that they were the two areas that could be looked at further. So that's an overview of the modern day slavery update. So new item to the audit risk committee. Any questions for Paul or myself?
Okay, thank you, Alison and Paul. Are there any questions on this item? No, so if there are no questions, the committee is requested to note the contents of the report and the Modern Slavery Action Plan. Is that noted? Noted. Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 12, and it's the Audit and Risk Committee Work Programme, and that will be presented by Elizabeth Brooks.
Thank you very much. So this is the work programme. You'll be familiar with it. It comes to every committee, and I don't believe there are any material changes to the rolling programme to alert you to. The one thing that we did just want to raise was around member training. So obviously when we were able to meet in person, we were undertaking some training sessions prior to the committee meeting itself, and that's obviously proved a little bit more difficult virtually, but we did just want to ask whether there was any particular requests for training, or any views on how you would like training to be delivered going forward. Obviously, I've sort of put you on the spot now, but obviously happy to take any views now, or if you have any thoughts and want to email me, and we can perhaps sort of work a bit of a training program into the program as well, if you would like it.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Are there any comments or items on this agenda item? No, so if there aren't any, the recommendation is that the rolling programme of work for the committee be agreed.
Agreed.
I guess that's agreed. Okay, thank you. So the final item on the agenda is urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. So we can, I guess I can draw this meeting to a close then, and thank you all for your time tonight.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your hard work.